The morning sun cuts through the smog of downtown Los Angeles like a blade through silk, casting long shadows across the busy intersection of Wilshire and Vermont. It's 7:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, and the city is already alive with the rhythm of rushed footsteps, honking horns, and the distant hum of the Metro Red Line rumbling beneath the pavement. At the bus stop, a small crowd has gathered, the usual mix of office workers clutching coffee cups, students with backpacks slung over shoulders, and service workers heading to their early shifts. Among them stands Maria Gonzalez, 26 years old, 7 months pregnant, and already exhausted before her day has truly begun. Her hand rests gently on her rounded belly as she shifts her weight from one foot to the other, trying to ease the constant ache in her lower back. The baby has been particularly active this morning, and Maria can feel tiny kicks against her ribs, a reminder of the life growing inside her and the responsibility that weighs heavier than her physical burden. Maria works as a nurse's aide at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, a job that requires her to be on her feet for 12-hour shifts, lifting patients, running between rooms, and maintaining the kind of energy that seems to drain a little more from her reserves each day. The pregnancy has made everything harder, but she can't afford to take time off. Not yet. Not when the baby's arrival is still 2 months away and the bills keep coming. The sound of hydraulic brakes and the familiar wheeze of the approaching bus breaks through her thoughts. Route 720, the Wilshire Rapid, her lifeline to work and back home to her small apartment in Koreatown. As the bus pulls up to the curb, Maria notices it's more crowded than usual. Through the windows, she can see passengers pressed together, holding onto poles and handles, swaying with the motion of the vehicle. The doors open with a mechanical sigh, and the small crowd begins to board. Maria waits her turn, knowing that patience is often the only virtue she can afford in a city that rarely slows down for anyone. As she climbs the 3 steps onto the bus, the air conditioning hits her face, a welcome relief from the already warming morning air outside. But relief is short-lived as she surveys the scene before her. Every seat is occupied. Every pole has a hand wrapped around it. The aisle is a narrow pathway bordered by shoulders and bags, and the quiet desperation of people just trying to get where they need to go. Maria makes her way down the aisle, her hand trailing along the seat backs for balance as the bus lurches forward into traffic. She's not the type to ask for a seat. Her mother raised her to be independent, to handle her own problems, to never be a burden on others. But as another wave of back pain shoots through her, she can't help but hope that someone might notice her condition and offer their seat. Near the middle of the bus, she finds a small space to stand, gripping the overhead rail with both hands as the bus rocks and sways through the stop-and-go traffic of morning rush hour. Around her, passengers are lost in their own worlds, some scrolling through phones, others staring out windows, a few trying to catch a few more minutes of sleep before reaching their destinations. It's then that she notices him. Sitting in one of the priority seats, clearly marked with a sign indicating it's reserved for elderly, disabled, and pregnant passengers, is a man who appears to be in his early 30s. He's wearing an expensive-looking suit, probably designer, with perfectly polished shoes and a watch that catches the light every time he moves his wrist. His dark hair is styled with the kind of precision that suggests regular visits to an upscale salon, and his clean-shaven face has the well-maintained appearance of someone who takes considerable pride in his image. His name is Marcus Chen, though Maria doesn't know this yet. What she does know, what anyone looking at him would know, is that he's clearly successful, clearly comfortable, and clearly aware of his position in the world. He sits with the confident posture of someone who believes he deserves whatever space he occupies. Marcus is scrolling through his phone, a newest model iPhone in a leather case that probably cost more than Maria makes in a week. He's checking his stock portfolio, responding to emails, and occasionally glancing up to check the bus's progress through the traffic. He has an important meeting at 9 a.m. with potential investors for his tech startup, and he's mentally rehearsing his presentation, thinking about the numbers he'll present and the impression he needs to make. Maria stands just a few feet away from him, swaying with the motion of the bus, her hand pressed against her lower back. She's not looking at him directly, but she's aware of his presence in the priority seat. The sign above his head might as well be invisible for all the attention he's paying to it. As the bus makes another stop, more passengers board, and Maria finds herself pressed closer to Marcus's seat. The space around her grows smaller, the air thicker, and the weight of her pregnancy seems to multiply with each passing minute. She catches his eye for just a moment, a brief, hopeful glance that carries with it the universal language of human need. It's not a demand, not an expectation, just a quiet acknowledgement of her situation and a gentle hope that he might understand. Marcus looks at her, and for a split second his eyes register her condition. He sees the rounded belly, the way she's holding herself, the slight grimace that crosses her face as the bus hits a pothole. But then, as quickly as the moment came, it passes. His attention returns to his phone, his thumb continuing to scroll through emails as if nothing happened. Maria feels the sting of dismissal but doesn't say anything. She's not the type to make a scene, not the type to demand what she feels she deserves. Instead, she adjusts her grip on the rail and tries to find a more comfortable position, though comfort seems impossible in the crowded confines of the bus. The morning commute continues, but something has shifted in the air. An invisible line has been drawn, a moment of choice has passed, and the consequences of that choice are about to ripple outward in ways that neither Maria nor Marcus could possibly imagine. Chapter 2: The Moment of Truth. The bus continues its jerky progression through the maze of Los Angeles traffic, and with each stop, the tension in the air seems to thicken. Maria has been standing for 15 minutes now, and the pain in her back has evolved from a dull ache to sharp, shooting sensations that make her catch her breath. She shifts her weight again, trying to find some relief, but the crowded bus offers no sanctuary. Around her, other passengers have begun to notice her situation. An elderly woman near the front of the bus keeps glancing back at her with obvious concern. A teenage boy wearing a school uniform looks like he wants to offer his seat, but seems intimidated by the adults standing between them. But Marcus remains in his priority seat, seemingly oblivious to the growing awareness around him. He's now on a phone call, speaking in the confident, slightly aggressive tone that he uses for business conversations. His voice carries just enough volume to ensure that everyone around him understands he's discussing important matters: investment rounds, market projections, strategic partnerships. "Look, David," he says into his phone, "if they can't see the potential in our Q3 numbers, then they're not the right investors for us. We're not desperate here. We're selective." The irony is lost on him. The man sitting in a seat designated for those who need it most, speaking about not being desperate while a pregnant woman stands just feet away, desperately needing exactly what he's occupying. Maria closes her eyes for a moment, trying to center herself, trying to find the strength to endure the remaining 20 minutes of her journey. But as the bus hits another pothole, she stumbles slightly, her hand flying to her belly as a sharp pain shoots through her lower back and down her legs. The elderly woman near the front can't stay silent any longer. Her name is Dorothy Williams, 73 years old, a retired teacher who spent 40 years working in the Los Angeles Unified School District. She's seen enough thoughtlessness in her lifetime to recognize it when she sees it. "Excuse me," Dorothy says, her voice carrying the authority of someone who spent decades managing classrooms. She's looking directly at Marcus, though he's still absorbed in his phone call. Marcus glances up, slightly annoyed at the interruption. "Can I call you back?" he says into his phone, then looks at Dorothy with the expression of someone who's been inconvenienced. "Young man," Dorothy continues, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a pregnant woman standing right there who could use that seat you're in." The bus falls silent. Conversations stop. The only sounds are the rumble of the engine and the ambient noise of traffic outside. Every passenger within earshot has turned their attention to this unfolding drama. Marcus looks at Dorothy, then at Maria, then back at Dorothy. His face shows a mixture of embarrassment and defensiveness. "I'm sorry, but I was here first," he says, his voice carrying the edge of someone who's not used to being challenged. "I paid my fare just like everyone else." Dorothy's eyes narrow. "That's a priority seat, son. It's for people who need it most." "And how do you know I don't need it?" Marcus responds, his tone becoming more defensive. "Maybe I have a condition you can't see. Maybe I have back problems. You don't know anything about me." But everyone can see that Marcus appears perfectly healthy. His posture is straight, his movements are fluid, and there's nothing about his appearance that suggests any physical limitation. His argument rings hollow in the confined space of the bus. Maria, who has been trying to remain invisible throughout this exchange, finally speaks up. Her voice is soft, almost apologetic. "It's okay," she says, though it clearly isn't. "I'm fine. I can stand." But Dorothy isn't finished. "No, honey, you're not fine. You're 7 months pregnant, and this gentleman should do the right thing." Marcus's face flushes red, but not from shame, from anger. "I don't appreciate being lectured by strangers," he says, his voice rising slightly. "I work hard for my money. I pay my taxes. I don't owe anyone anything." The words hang in the air like a toxic cloud. Other passengers exchange glances, some shaking their heads, others looking away in second-hand embarrassment. A few pull out their phones, perhaps sensing that this moment might be worth recording. "It's not about owing anyone anything," Dorothy replies, her teacher's instincts kicking in. "It's about being a decent human being. It's about understanding that we're all in this together, and sometimes doing the right thing costs us nothing but makes all the difference to someone else." Marcus laughs, but it's not a pleasant sound. "Save the philosophy lesson for someone else, lady. This is the real world. You want something, you work for it. You don't get handed things just because you're pregnant." The cruelty of his words hits Maria like a physical blow. She's worked every day of her pregnancy, often through pain and exhaustion, to support herself and prepare for her baby's arrival. The suggestion that she's looking for handouts, that she hasn't earned the right to basic human courtesy, brings tears to her eyes. But then something unexpected happens. From the back of the bus, a quiet voice speaks up. "I'll give you my seat." Chapter 3: The Quiet Man. The voice comes from the very back of the bus, where the seats are less desirable, where the ride is bumpier, and where people usually sit only when everywhere else is full. All heads turn to see who has spoken. He's a man in his late 60s, wearing simple clothes, clean but well-worn jeans, a navy blue sweater, and comfortable walking shoes that have seen many miles. His hair is graying at the temples, and his face carries the kind of lines that come from years of genuine smiles and deep thought. There's something immediately calming about his presence, a quiet dignity that seems to radiate from him without any effort. This is Denzel Washington, though most of the passengers don't recognize him in this context. Without the spotlight, without the red carpet, without the Hollywood glamour, he's just another passenger on a city bus. But those who do recognize him are struck by the surreal nature of the moment. One of the most celebrated actors in the world, choosing to ride public transportation, and now offering his seat to a pregnant woman. Denzel rises slowly from his seat, his movements deliberate and graceful. He begins to walk toward the front of the bus, and as he passes each row, passengers start to realize who he is. Whispers begin to ripple through the crowd, but he pays them no attention. His focus is entirely on Maria. "Ma'am," he says, his voice carrying the same warmth and authority that has commanded movie screens for decades, "please take my seat." Maria looks up at him, and for a moment she's speechless. She recognizes him, of course, who wouldn't? But more than his celebrity, she's struck by the genuine kindness in his eyes, the way he's looking at her as if she's the most important person in the world in this moment. I couldn't, she stammers. You were sitting all the way back there, you don't have to. I want to, Denzel interrupts gently. Please, it would be my honor. The contrast between his response and Marcus's couldn't be more stark. Where Marcus had been defensive and self-serving, Denzel is gracious and selfless. Where Marcus had argued about rights and fairness, Denzel simply offers what he can give. But as Maria begins to make her way toward the back of the bus, guided by Denzel's gentle hand on her elbow, something even more remarkable happens. Other passengers begin to stand. The teenage boy in the school uniform jumps up from his seat near the middle of the bus. "Mr. Washington," he says, his voice cracking slightly with nervousness and excitement, "you can have my seat." An older man in work clothes stands up as well. "No, take mine." Soon, half the bus is standing, everyone wanting to offer their seat to the man who had just shown them what real character looks like. But Denzel politely declines each offer, choosing instead to stand near the front of the bus, not far from where Marcus remains stubbornly seated. The irony of the situation is not lost on anyone. Marcus, who had argued that he deserved his priority seat, now finds himself surrounded by people willingly giving up their seats out of respect and admiration for a man who had just demonstrated the very values Marcus had dismissed. As Maria settles into Denzel's former seat, she looks back toward the front of the bus. She catches Marcus's eye, and for just a moment she sees something different there. Not the defensive arrogance from before, but something that might be the beginning of shame. "Thank you," she calls out to Denzel, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much." Denzel nods and smiles, but his attention has now turned to Marcus. He doesn't confront him directly, doesn't lecture him or call him out. Instead, he simply stands nearby, his presence serving as a quiet reminder of what the situation could have been if Marcus had made a different choice. The bus continues its journey, but the atmosphere has completely changed. Passengers are talking quietly among themselves, many of them taking pictures or videos of Denzel, but doing so respectfully from a distance. The story of what just happened is already beginning to spread through social media, though the full impact won't be felt for hours. Marcus, meanwhile, sits in his priority seat, but he no longer looks comfortable. He's acutely aware of the glances from other passengers, the subtle judgment in their eyes. He's aware of Maria, now sitting comfortably in the back, her hand resting on her belly, a small smile on her face as she finally gets the relief she needed. Most of all, he's aware of Denzel Washington, standing just a few feet away, not saying a word, but somehow managing to communicate volumes about character, about kindness, about what it means to be a human being in a world that often seems to have forgotten the value of simple decency. The bus reaches the next stop, and a few passengers get off. New ones board, and the whispers begin again as they recognize the famous actor standing in the aisle. But Denzel's focus remains unchanged. He's not performing for the cameras or the crowds. He's simply being present, being decent, being the kind of person the world needs more of. And slowly, gradually, Marcus begins to understand that he's just witnessed something profound. Not just a celebrity sighting, but a masterclass in human dignity. In the span of just a few minutes, he's seen the difference between entitlement and humility, between taking and giving, between demanding respect and earning it. The lesson is about to become even more personal. Chapter 4: The Reckoning. The bus pulls into the stop at Wilshire and Western, and several passengers prepare to disembark. Marcus checks his phone and realizes this is his stop, the one that will take him to his important meeting with potential investors. He should be thinking about his presentation, about the numbers he'll share, about the impression he needs to make. Instead, he finds himself unable to stop thinking about the last 20 minutes of his life. As he stands to gather his things, he notices that Denzel is also preparing to get off at this stop. The realization hits him like a physical blow. This world-famous actor, this man who could afford any form of transportation he wanted, was riding the same bus to the same general area as Marcus. The assumptions Marcus had made about bus riders, about the kind of people who couldn't afford cars, about his own superiority in this situation, all crumble in an instant. Marcus steps off the bus, and as he does, he can hear Maria calling out once more, "Thank you, Mr. Washington. God bless you." Denzel waves back to her through the window as the bus pulls away, and then he and Marcus find themselves standing at the same bus stop, in the same morning sun, in the same city, breathing the same air. The difference is that one of them has just demonstrated the kind of character that inspires others, while the other has shown the kind of selfishness that diminishes everyone around him. For a moment they stand in awkward silence. Marcus wants to walk away, to pretend the last 20 minutes never happened, to get to his meeting and focus on his business. But something keeps him rooted to the spot. Maybe it's curiosity, maybe it's shame, or maybe it's the recognition that he's just been given a gift, the chance to learn something important about himself and about life. "Mr. Washington," he finally says, his voice barely above a whisper. Denzel turns to him, and there's no judgment in his eyes, no condescension, just patient attention. "Yes. I want to apologize for what happened on the bus. I should have given up my seat. I knew she needed it more than I did." Denzel nods slowly. "Yes, you should have." The simple honesty of the response is somehow more powerful than any lecture could have been. Marcus feels the weight of his choices, the smallness of his excuses, the reality of his behavior reflected back at him without any softening or minimization. "I don't know why I didn't," Marcus continues. "I guess I was just. I had this important meeting and I was focused on myself and I." He trails off, realizing how pathetic his justifications sound. "Can I ask you something?" Denzel says, his tone gentle but direct. "When you saw that young woman struggling, when you saw her pain, what did you feel?" Marcus thinks about this for a moment. "I felt uncomfortable. I felt like I should do something, but I also felt like it wasn't my responsibility, like someone else would handle it." "And how do you feel now?" "Ashamed," Marcus admits. "Deeply ashamed. You showed me what I should have done, what I could have done. It wouldn't have cost me anything to give up that seat, nothing at all, but it would have meant everything to her." Denzel nods slowly, his expression thoughtful. "You know, I've been riding buses in this city for over 40 years. Since I was a young actor, barely making ends meet, taking any job I could get. Back then, I was just another struggling performer, riding the bus to auditions, to acting classes, to whatever job would pay the bills. I remember being tired, being frustrated, being worried about my future." He pauses, looking down the street where the bus has disappeared into traffic. "But I also remember the people who showed me kindness during those difficult times. The bus drivers who waited an extra second when they saw me running. The passengers who offered directions when I was lost. The strangers who smiled and said good morning when I was feeling invisible." Marcus listens intently, beginning to understand that he's receiving something precious, not just advice, but wisdom earned through decades of experience. "And I learned something important," Denzel continues. "Success, fame, money, none of that changes who you are at your core. It just reveals it. When you have more power to help or to hurt, to lift people up or to look down on them. The question is, who do you want to be when you have that power?" Marcus looks down at his expensive shoes, his tailored suit, his designer watch. All of it feels meaningless now, like costume jewelry, like props in a performance he's been giving for so long that he forgot it wasn't real. "I work in tech," he says quietly. "I'm always talking about disruption, about changing the world, about making things better, but I couldn't even give up a bus seat to help someone who needed it. What kind of person does that make me?" "It makes you human," Denzel replies. "We all fall short sometimes. The question is what we do with that knowledge. Do we learn from it, or do we make excuses and continue being the same person? Marcus looks up at him, and for the first time in years, he feels like he's seeing clearly. I want to be better. I want to be the kind of person who would have given up that seat without thinking twice about it. Then be that person, Denzel says simply, starting right now. The next time you see someone who needs help, who needs kindness, who needs someone to notice their struggle, be the person who steps up. Not because you have to, but because you want to. Because you understand that we're all connected, and taking care of each other is what makes us human. They stand in silence for a moment. Two men from different worlds, different generations, different backgrounds, sharing a moment of understanding on a busy Lowe's Angel Street corner. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus says, his voice hesitant. "Why did you give up your seat? I mean, you were sitting in the back, you didn't have to get involved. You could have just stayed out of it." Denzel smiles, and there's something deeply peaceful about his expression. Because I saw myself in her. Not literally, of course, but I saw someone who was struggling, someone who needed help, someone who was being ignored by people who could have easily made her day better. And I thought about all the times in my life when someone helped me when they didn't have to. All the times someone showed me kindness when I needed it most. He pauses, watching the morning commuters hurrying past them on the sidewalk. "You know, people often ask me about my success, about how I got to where I am. And they expect me to talk about talent, about hard work, about determination. All of that matters, of course. But the real truth is that I got here because people helped me along the way. Teachers who believed in me. Directors who gave me chances. Fellow actors who mentored me. Strangers who showed me kindness when I was struggling." Marcus feels something shifting inside him. A fundamental reorientation of his understanding of success and community and human connection. "I could have been Maria," Denzel continues. "I could have been the one standing on that bus, needing help, hoping someone would notice. We all could be. Success isn't permanent. Health isn't guaranteed. The circumstances that make us comfortable today could change tomorrow. And when they do, we'll need people to show us the same kindness we should be showing others now." "I never thought about it that way," Marcus admits. "I always thought that if I worked hard enough, if I was successful enough, I wouldn't need anyone's help. I could take care of myself." "And maybe you can," Denzel says. "But that's not the point. The point is that we're not meant to go through life alone. We're meant to help each other, to lift each other up, to see each other's struggles and respond with compassion. That's what makes us human. That's what makes life worth living." Marcus feels tears welling up in his eyes, though he's not entirely sure why. Maybe it's the weight of his own selfishness finally hitting him. Maybe it's the realization of how much he's been missing by viewing life as a competition instead of a collaboration. Maybe it's just the overwhelming experience of being seen clearly by someone who has no reason to care about him, but chooses to anyway. "I don't know how to be that person," he says quietly. "I've been focused on myself for so long, I'm not sure I know how to focus on others." "You start small," Denzel says. "You hold doors, you smile at people, you notice when someone needs help and you offer it. You listen when people talk instead of just waiting for your turn to speak. You ask yourself in every interaction, how can I make this person's day a little better? And then you do it." "Your meeting," Denzel says, nodding toward the tall office building a block away. "You should go, but remember this feeling, remember this moment, and remember that young woman who just needed someone to care." Marcus nods, feeling like he's been fundamentally changed in the span of a single bus ride. "Thank you," he says, "for showing me what I should have done, for showing me who I want to be." "Thank you for being open to learning," Denzel replies. "That's the hardest part." As Marcus walks toward his meeting, he's no longer thinking about stock options or investor presentations. He's thinking about Maria, about the pain in her eyes when he refused to help, about the relief and gratitude she showed when someone finally did. He's thinking about the kind of man he wants to be, the kind of father he hopes to become someday, the kind of human being the world needs more of. The office building looms before him, all glass and steel and corporate ambition. But as he rides the elevator to the 32nd floor, Marcus finds himself seeing it differently. He notices the security guard who greets him with a tired smile, and Marcus smiles back, really smiles, for the first time in months. He notices the cleaning woman emptying trash cans, and he nods to her respectfully. He notices the young receptionist who seems overwhelmed by her workload, and he takes a moment to thank her for her help. Small gestures, but they feel revolutionary to Marcus. For years, he's moved through the world as if everyone else were background characters in his personal story. Now, suddenly, he's beginning to see that everyone has their own story, their own struggles, their own need for kindness and recognition. The meeting goes well, better than well, actually. The investors are impressed by his passion, his vision, his commitment to building something meaningful. But Marcus finds himself talking about more than just profit margins and market share. He talks about community, about responsibility, about using success to lift others up rather than just climbing higher himself. "We're not just building a company," he hears himself saying. "We're building something that can make people's lives better. And that starts with how we treat each other, how we see each other, how we choose to respond when someone needs our help." The investors exchange glances, intrigued by this unexpected dimension to his presentation. They're used to hearing about disruption and market penetration and user acquisition. But there's something compelling about Marcus's broader vision, something that suggests he's thinking about success in a more holistic way. After the meeting, as Marcus walks back to the bus stop, he calls his assistant. "Jenny," he says, "I want you to research something for me. Find out about employee support programs at local hospitals. Specifically, programs that help healthcare workers who are struggling financially." "Of course, Mr. Chen. Any particular hospital you're interested in?" "Cedars-Sinai. And Jenny, thank you for all you do. I know I don't say that enough, but I really appreciate how hard you work." There's a pause on the other end of the line. "Thank you, Mr. Chen, that means a lot." When he gets home that evening, Marcus does something he's never done before. He researches Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, finds their employee support fund, and makes a donation. Not a small one, but a meaningful one. He doesn't do it for recognition or tax benefits. He does it because somewhere in that hospital, Maria is working a 12-hour shift, taking care of others while 7 months pregnant, and he wants to do something, anything, to honor the lesson she taught him without ever saying a word. But he doesn't stop there. He finds himself staying up late, researching other organizations that help people in need, a program that provides free childcare for hospital workers, a scholarship fund for the children of bus drivers and janitors and security guards, a nonprofit that helps pregnant women access prenatal care regardless of their ability to pay. He makes donations to all of them, but more importantly, he reaches out to volunteer his time, his expertise, his connections. He offers to serve on boards, to mentor young entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds, to use his success to create opportunities for others. The next morning, instead of calling his usual car service, Marcus walks to the bus stop. He's nervous, unsure of how to navigate this world he's previously avoided. But as he boards the bus and pays his fare, he feels something he hasn't experienced in years, a sense of connection to his community. He looks around at his fellow passengers, the office workers and students and service employees who make up the fabric of the city. He sees them differently now, not as obstacles or background noise, but as people with their own dreams and struggles and stories worth knowing. When an elderly man boards the bus a few stops later, Marcus immediately stands up and offers his seat. The man looks surprised but grateful, and as he settles into the seat, he smiles at Marcus. "Thank you, son. These old bones appreciate it." Marcus smiles back, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. It's such a small gesture, but it feels monumentally important. He's learning that kindness isn't just about grand gestures or large donations. It's about the small, daily choices to see other people's humanity and respond to it. As the bus continues its journey through the city, Marcus finds himself thinking about Denzel's words from the day before, about being the kind of person who steps up when someone needs help, about understanding that we're all connected and that taking care of each other is what makes us human. He thinks about Maria, too, and wonders how she's doing. He hopes her pregnancy is going well, hopes she's getting the support she needs, hopes that someone is taking care of her the way she takes care of others. And he thinks about the man he used to be, the one who sat in that priority seat, defending his right to comfort while someone else suffered. That man feels like a stranger now, someone from a different life, someone he's grateful to have left behind. The bus reaches his stop, and as Marcus prepares to disembark, he realizes that this simple act of taking public transportation has become more than just a means of getting to work. It's become a daily reminder of his commitment to being a better person, a daily opportunity to practice the kind of kindness that Denzel had shown him. He also does something else. He starts taking the bus to work regularly, not because he has to, but because he wants to. Because he wants to be part of the community he had previously considered himself above. Because he wants to be the kind of person who gives up his seat without being asked, who helps carry someone's groceries, who sees the humanity in everyone he encounters. And sometimes, when he's standing in the aisle of the bus, holding onto the rail, swaying with the motion of the city around him, he thinks about that morning when his life changed. When a pregnant woman needed help, when a famous actor showed him what character looks like, and when he learned that being a good person isn't about what you achieve or what you accumulate. It's about what you give, what you notice, and how you choose to respond when someone needs you most. The tables had turned that morning, not through some cosmic justice or dramatic confrontation, but through the simple power of one person choosing to be kind when another chose to be selfish. And in that choice, everyone on that bus, everyone who witnessed that moment, learned something about the kind of people they wanted to be. Marcus had learned that success without compassion is just an expensive way to be alone. He had learned that the only thing that really matters is how we treat each other, especially when no one is watching, especially when it costs us something to be kind. Most importantly, he had learned that it's never too late to change. Never too late to choose kindness over selfishness. Never too late to become the person you wish you had been all along. Epilogue: The Ripple Effect. 6 months later, Maria gives birth to a healthy baby girl. She names her Hope, partly because of the hope she felt during those difficult months of pregnancy, and partly because of the hope she gained from witnessing unexpected kindness on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Marcus's company goes public, making him very wealthy. But he measures his success differently now. By the scholarship fund he's established for children of service workers, by the free childcare program he's funded at local hospitals, by the countless small acts of kindness he performs daily without anyone watching or recording. Denzel continues to ride the bus occasionally, not for publicity or image, but because he genuinely enjoys the connection to his community. He's been doing it for decades, and he'll continue doing it because that's who he is, someone who understands that fame and fortune are just circumstances, but character is a choice you make every single day. Dorothy, the retired teacher who spoke up that morning, starts a small movement in her neighborhood. She organizes Kindness Tuesdays, where community members commit to performing small acts of service for strangers. The movement spreads to other neighborhoods, other cities, other states. She never mentions the bus incident specifically, but she always tells people that sometimes all it takes is one person willing to do the right thing to change everything. The video of that morning, captured by several passengers and pieced together from multiple angles, goes viral, but not in the way you might expect. It doesn't become a source of mockery or shame. Instead, it becomes a catalyst for conversations about empathy, about privilege, about the small choices we make every day that define who we are. Marcus watches the video once, months later, and instead of feeling embarrassed, he feels grateful. Grateful for the lesson, grateful for the change, grateful for the reminder that every day we have the opportunity to choose kindness over selfishness, connection over isolation, love over indifference. And sometimes, when he's riding the bus to work, he thinks about that morning and smiles. Not because he's proud of how he acted, but because he's proud of who he's become. Because he learned that when life turns the tables, when we're forced to confront our own character, we have two choices. We can defend our smallness or we can choose to grow. The best part about choosing to grow is that it's never too late to start. Every morning brings new opportunities to be kind, to be helpful, to be the person who gives up their seat without being asked. And in a world that often seems short on heroes, sometimes the most heroic thing you can do is simply care about someone else's struggle and do something about it. The bus keeps running, carrying its passengers through the city, through their lives, through moments of choice and consequence. And every day, people board that bus with the opportunity to write their own story, to be the person who helps or the person who looks away, to be the one who lifts others up or the one who stays sitting down. The choice, as always, is ours.